As if by magic, here I am. My name's Tom Deacon. Welcome along to Nitro Nights Stories. An absolute pleasure to have you inside currently my lounge, looking incredibly Christmassy. But if this is your first time, there's been a whole host of Nitro Nights Stories. Make sure you go and check them out when you get a chance. Last time I got to do one of these was with Tia Mousson. It was fascinating to find out about her sim racing journey and everything that she's doing with the content that she's creating on her YouTube channel. Today is no different. Before I welcome our guest, and I know he has been eager to get on the show, but due to a few weather incidents over in the US, hasn't been able to until tonight. So fingers crossed there's no more issues there. But in the meantime, don't forget overtake_GG. Loads of things for you to get involved in on Instagram, on Twitter, Facebook, and on YouTube. And of course, right here on Twitch. So make sure you do that. Right, without further ado, I can't wait to welcome him to the Nitro Nights Stories tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kame Trick. Welcome to Nitro Nights Stories.
Hey there, thank you. Glad to be here.
Ben, real name Ben Craft. I didn't know whether to go with Ben Craft or Kame Trick, but a lot of people know you as Kame Trick.
Absolutely, yep. Kametrick is the way to go.
It is the way to go, and obviously Craft with a C, not a K. Otherwise, we'd be talking to the New England Patriots owner, and that would be a very different setup. So listen, great to have you on the show.
Sure.
Very different.
Glad to be here.
So listen, first of all, this is my backdrop. Got a bit of a Christmassy feel. The first question I would like to get you to answer is, are there any items in the sim racing world of technology that you're looking forward to maybe receiving as a present at Christmas time this year?
Oh goodness, that is a big question. So I'm pretty happy with my wheel and pedal kit. I could always use more emergency handbrakes, though. I seem to find a way to destroy them somewhat regularly during my live streams.
Well, okay. Well, that's fair enough. If I don't want you to lose those in any way. I just should mention, obviously, we are on Twitter. There's loads of questions that I'm hoping will pop through tonight. I want to cover certain things, and not just Christmas-based presents that you might receive, your journey, your YouTube show, and of course, we have to talk about it, the drift life. And I think that's where we should start. There might be some old ground covered. I've been extensively watching your videos, and I feel like I already know you. But for those that don't, let's take it way back. Where did the journey start when it comes to getting into the world of drift?
So for me, I guess being exposed to drifting first came about in the early 2000s when drifting as a motorsport first came over from Japan to the United States. Right about 2002 is when that kind of happened, and they began to have those events. But a year or two before that, you were already able to find some Japanese videos from Video Option, Hot Version, Best Garage, Best Motoring. Those are all essentially Japanese media outlets that were making drift content before it really got popularized in the States. And so I was into cars already, and at one of our local, brick and mortar back in the day speed shops, we would have they had like a TV, and they were always playing random videos. And so I came in one day just to hang out with the guys, and they had drifting on, and I thought, well, this is impressive. I need to see more of this. And so that's kind of how I got into it, and waited for my opportunity to try it myself, and then the rest is history.
It seems so simple when you say the rest of history. There's a whole journey that's involved in that.
There is.
First of all, the noticing on Twitch, people are loving the fact that your steering wheels are just hung up to the side in the backdrop. They're commenting on that, and they're calling you the motoring greatest of all time, which is a beautiful sentiment to explain. And I'm loving your videos as well. I'm also loving, Ben, your shirt that you're wearing, a PlayStation beauty.
Yep, original PlayStation.
We've got to talk about that before we move on. It feels like I should have dressed up and put my shirt on for this interview.
Yeah, I have a lot of pride in this shirt. Nothing special to it. I just kind of came across it in a shop one day as I was looking for completely unrelated things. But the moment that I saw it, I knew that I had to buy it. I didn't even bother to check what it cost. I just said, yes, this speaks to me. I mean, I've been into gaming since the original Nintendo days. I got to play a little bit of an Atari visiting an uncle's house when I was a young child, and so ever since as things would come up, I was playing Spy Hunter, I was playing RC Pro Am back on Nintendo, and then we went to Super Nintendo and to PlayStation One, and that's when things really blew up, and I got to play Gran Turismo for the first time, which was probably the best, most realistic taste of all that like motorsports and the car world has to offer for a young kid who is into gaming. And so, yeah, the PlayStation logo really speaks to me, and I love the original like retro feel of it at this point.
Just that one shirt, you just understand you immediately. And
Yep.
I, I'm sure lots of people can relate to that from the first console they got. When you mentioned that speaks to me, Japan spoke to you. It was a calling in many respects. I watched your video.
Yeah.
One of them in particular said, I knew I wanted to go to Japan, and you did that. You just often went. That's remarkably brave to just go, I'm just going to go and live in another country and make it, because you had that passion for drifting. So you went. What was that like? What was the emotions, the feelings?
Oh man, it was a wild time. So let's see. I decided in around eighth grade in middle school that it was so silly. I wanted to learn Japanese, move to Japan, and become a professional like comic book artist, a manga artist. So I was interested in the Japanese culture, not just the motorsports. I actually got into the artwork side of things, and that then exposed me to the motorsports and kind of came full circle and drew me into all of Japanese culture. So, yeah, I started studying Japanese in college. I needed to take a semester of a foreign language to get my 4 year degree that I was working on. And I didn't even expect that my university would have Japanese as an option, but they did. So I began studying the language and really enjoyed it. It clicked for me on the second try. I had to take the level one class twice, but after that, everything was smooth sailing, and I just took one class after the next. I never realistically thought it would lead me to Japan at that point. But at the end of the 4 years, I was actually able to go on a study abroad that I didn't even know was an option. But I learned at the end, if you complete all the courses, then you can apply for the study abroad. So then I did that, and I got accepted. And the next thing that I knew, I was saying bye to the fam and hopping on a plane for approximately like round trip from when you get out of your car in the parking lot to when you like get to your hotel in Japan, like a 24-hour process of
Wow.
not being comfortable. Couldn't imagine doing it now, but yeah, it was great.
No.
I've gone back a few times. I hope to go back again soon once things get into a better situation in the whole big picture here.
Yeah, well, I will ask you about that. How 2020 and everything that's gone on has affected your content creating. I know even a stomach bug at the beginning of November knocked you out from being able to race in ice storm.
Yeah,
You go to Japan. Let's just picture
I
that
did.
for a second. You
Mhm.
go there. What was it like living there? And is was your first experience of drifting uh, on a sim, or was it real life drifting?
Okay, so the experience of going there, there's two main like archetypes of Japan. You've got the city life, think Tokyo, neon lights, Osaka. That's what most people think of when they think of Japan if they've never been before. And then you've got the more, I don't want to call it the countryside, but in a nutshell, compared to the bright lights of Tokyo, you've got everything else. You've got the countryside, the suburbs, and things like that. So I lived in the countryside, the prefecture, which is like a state, but the prefecture that I lived in Japan was 70% mountains. It was called Yamanashi. And those of you who are into drifting may recognize the name Yamanashi. It's where the track Sportsland Yamanashi is located. I was actually about two train stations away from Niigata City, which is where Sportsland Yamanashi is. But when you're over there, I mean, it's really interesting because in the countryside, no one speaks English. It's very uncommon to see a foreigner, and so I was immediately challenged by the uh, the language. I've been studying for 2 years, and in a classroom in America, I was pretty good. I was one of the best. But as soon as I got to Japan, I realized, okay, this is really hard. I'm like feeling like I'm starting back at square one again, and worked my way through. But perspective is really important, and I was just so happy to be there that anything that I needed to struggle through, even if I needed to do some charades to talk to somebody and like get my point across, totally fine. I was happy to do it. It was a great time. Beautiful countryside. You can't you can't take an ugly picture in the countryside of Japan. Point your camera anywhere, it's going to be picturesque. It's a very cool and like calming place to be. The only thing that's weird, especially as an American, because our country is very large and there's not a ton of population density outside of the biggest cities. So in Japan, it's very mountainous. Obviously, it's a like a volcanic island chain. So everywhere that is flat, people build, and everywhere that is kind of hilly and mountainous is where most of the time more of the suburbs go and things like that. But you kind of feel like you're in a bowl when you're in the Japanese countryside. If you're in the cities, they build so much that you just see, buildings all around you. But when you're in the country, there's always just mountains everywhere. So it feels not quite claustrophobic, but it's interesting. You definitely feel a little contained. Like, okay, this is the little basin of humanity in this beautiful uh, mountainside area.
Yeah.
And then let's see. I'll go ahead.
Oh no, I just love the setting, the use of your words. I'm there. And then I'm thinking, hang on a minute. I reckon Ben was enjoying that peacefulness, and then suddenly went, I just want to tear it up. And is that how you just you into motorsport anyway before you left? But were you able to start drifting when you were out in the countryside? Let's call it the countryside compared to
Sure.
the hecticness of the main cities.
I did not get to drive myself while I was out there. One of the downsides of going on a study abroad as a college student is that you don't have that much spare income. So I did bring I brought my computer from the States because I didn't want to deal with trying to build one or like operate off of a laptop. So I brought a computer over, and then I ended up going. I'd already been playing a little bit of sim drifting, or well, sim grip racing actually, since before I left. And so once I was over there and got kind of established after about 4 months, because I was there for over a year, I picked up a like Logitech Driving Force old school wheel, no clutch, sequential shifter like built into
Wow.
the wheelbase, and enjoyed to the degree that I could some grip driving. But when I tried to do drifting on that wheel, because I'd already drifted, I started drifting in America in like 2003, not that much uh, after I got exposed to it. And that's a whole different story. But in any case, I already kind of knew what it was supposed to feel like. And in a nutshell, the force feedback on the super budget Logitech wheel that I had was just not adequate. You'll notice in drifting, a lot of times the drivers won't actually manually turn the wheel. They'll let the wheel go, and the suspension geometry in the caster in the front part of the car will actually cause the wheels to automatically point in whichever direction the car is rolling across the ground. Just like a shopping cart's front wheels will just steer automatically. So if you have a really budget wheel that isn't quite able to spin at the speed it needs to, then it just doesn't feel right to people that are used to like real life cars. And so I couldn't really get into sim drifting while I was in Japan, but I did do some grip racing. I enjoyed both, and yeah, I got to do that. I went to some real life drift events as well. I went out to an event at Sports Lane Yamanashi. I actually became friends with the track owner, and I went to some Formula Drift events at Fuji Speedway as well.
That's a smart move. Get friendly with the track owner. That leads on
Yes.
perfectly to a question from Spaghetti Mob underscore boss. I want to say the full name. It's respectful. Asks, asks, what was your favorite drift event in Japan?
Oh man, and shout out to Spaghetti as well. He's a regular in my live stream. So my favorite event that I went to was probably the Sportsline Yamanashi event. So when I first discovered the track, I was looking on. This is how you do it. This is back in the day, old school pro moves. You go on Google Satellite and you just start looking around until you find a racetrack. No joke. I kid you not. That was a thing that I used to do. I was looking for toge roads. I was looking for mountain roads to see if there was any good drifting I could go spot. And I actually found a racetrack not too far from my house. And I thought, that looks like a racetrack. And zoom in, read the Japanese. It says Sportsurando Yamanashi. So I'm like, okay, Sportsland Yamanashi. That's straightforward. Let me find their website. I plot a route, and I wait until the Saturday, grab my 3-speed metal with a big basket on the front, heavy as all get out, bicycle that they allowed us to have at the dorms. They had a little fleet of bicycles that all the foreign exchange students could use. And I took off and got to the base of the mountain where the track was, started to try to walk up because it was too steep to pedal. Decided I wasn't going to make it that day. A whole weekend later, I came back on a train knowing that I was going to have to walk up this mountain anyway. And then I just jogged and walked up the mountain. Got to meet the track owner. Unfortunately, it took so long that they were closing down for the day. I may have left a little late. Maybe not the most organized as a college student. We'll see. But all that to say, I got to know the track owner, and he invited me out later for a proper drift day, met me at the station, and drove me up to the track. So it was really nice to see that very grassroots track being driven by so many cars. Team Kobayashi was out there if you are into Yamanashi area drift crews, and a couple of guys who had competed in Formula Drift that weren't regulars, but were quite good, sort of on the cusp of that feeder series where you'd want to get in, but you're not quite there. A couple of guys were there as well. I got to ride with one of those gentlemen in a Chaser, big JZ motor car, huge turbo. It was a real experience. I mean, I drifted before, but my car at the time was powered by a naturally aspirated motor that made maybe 150 horsepower. So it was very challenging to drift my car, and to get to ride along in probably a 350 or 450 horsepower car with a much more skilled driver was a visceral experience, and it inspired how I would later drive my car when it got that much power.
Everything happens for a reason. I think everyone knows this, or if you haven't, you go through those life experiences and then you realize the fact that Kame Trick, I mean, I don't want to steal your thunder. I know there's two versions. There's a longer version and there's the shorter version of why you've taken that name, but summed up perfectly. You take a slow car compared to a fast car. I mean, that sounds ridiculous saying that, but you are avoiding the faster car. How quickly can you drive the slower car? It is the essence. That's the trick. That's what the mastery. And if I know anything about drifting, it's about precision and commitment. And so you take Japan, those experiences, those memories, long lasting. Even now, the smile on your face to see is brilliant. Where do you go when you come back? Then you take all your knowledge, your experiences. When did the YouTube start? When did you start investing in your car? And please, if I missed anything out of Kame Trick, please explain that story as well.
Okay. I guess I'll explain Kame Trick really quickly because I get asked a lot. Kame is the Japanese word for turtle. And if you're a fan of Dragon Ball, the anime series, you may recognize that King Kame, Kamehameha. That means turtle or tortoise. And the idea was I had a fairly slow car, and I put all of my time and money into seat time, suspension, brakes, differential, all the things that make the car handle better, and all the things that allow the driver to drive the car better, before I focused any on the power output. And at least at the time, a lot of folks were rushing out, and they were turboing their car, or they were engine swapping their car, making it faster because that's the cool thing to do. But ultimately, I felt as a driver, you would progress farther if you focused on suspension and driving technique first. Also, I was a little bit budget limited, so that's kind of where I decided to put all of my priorities. What that resulted in was a car that looked as slow as a turtle, which is where the Kame comes from. However, if you wanted to run with me on the back roads back in the day, you would find that it was surprisingly fast. So there must be some trick to it. So that's Kame Trick. That was kind of the gist. A joke about the fact that I was driving a slow car, but also not a joke in the sense that you need to tune the driver at least as much as you tune the car.
Just that thought alone, Ben, Mr. Kame Trick, is fantastic because there's the British Touring Car Championship over here in Britain, and Ashley Sutton just won it, even though he didn't have the fastest car. When you break it down, you say, "Well, that's not the fastest car. How's he won?" And I think the
Mhm.
whole ethos, the whole mantra that you follow, is something that sim racing drivers can take on board. And how do you get the most out of your car? I think that's is that what inspires you when you're sim racing?
Yeah, to a degree. I mean, my main inspiration is just the sheer fun of drifting. And when I'm doing grip practice, I'm a lot more serious about it. But there's fun in that as well, you know, just trying to nail the perfect entry, the perfect mid corner, and the perfect exit, which I have a long way to go on all of those, honestly. But there's definitely a lot to be said for maximizing the driver's capabilities because in the heat of the moment, whether you do things perfectly or whether you make a mistake, whether your position is compromised by another vehicle, whether your car is having some mechanical trouble, the only thing that can adjust and deal with the situation and create the best result possible is the driver. So you need, like, in my opinion, there's drivers and then there's like tuners. And some guys can do both, but for the most part, when it comes down to it, you're either really a driver or you're more of a tuner who also drives. And so for me, I'm definitely a driver.
Okay. And when you look at your YouTube channel and your content that you're making, was it your first initial idea to start that to just show how much fun drifting can be, or was there another goal that you set out? How did it all come about?
Yeah, so you did kind of mention that, and I failed to answer. So I started my YouTube channel around 2017, seriously, I guess you could say. And I'm not a real serious guy. I keep things pretty mellow. But I had been watching YouTube content about drifting, people doing like drift and vlogging kind of together for a while. Some of the folks who were around at that time that I was watching Rob Dom. He wasn't actually drifting, but he was building RX-7s, amazing RX-7s. He's doing a four-rotor all-wheel drive RX-7 build right now. It's amazing. Check him out. And then Adam LZ, who at the time, back in 2016, 2017, I didn't think he was quite as good of a driver as me, but he had amazing content, a very cool story. You could tell that he was very genuine about what he was doing, and he has gotten so much seat time now that he is really, really good. In fact, he's gone pro in competition side as well as continuing to enjoy grassroots and festive events. And Taylor Ray. Taylor Ray is a YouTuber who I would kind of give credit for pushing me into actually taking action because I was wondering, am I late to the party? The people that are big doing YouTube drift content, I feel like they've been big for a while. Is it too late to try to get into it? And it's not. It never is, although it gets harder, over time. But I saw Taylor basically start a channel and come up fairly quickly into a good position, and now he's doing that content full time, which is awesome and really inspiring. Um, that's kind of what pushed me into deciding to make my own content. So I started in 2017, uh, and I wanted to show a few things. I wanted to show what it's like to be a regular drifter because I think a lot of people gravitate towards the top level of any activity of any sport. So they want to know what the pros do, how much does it cost to be a pro, what's the best route to become a pro, and that's great. That's all fine, but they represent, like a tiny sliver of all the people that are interested in this motorsport, that participate in this motorsport. And so one of the things that I wanted to do was show that, like, no, I'm not a pro, but I have been enjoying this motorsport at this point for 17 years, and it is sustainable. I didn't come from a racing family. My family isn't rich. I'm not rich. Um, through budgeting, planning, and sustained effort, you can make this a thing you can enjoy for your entire life if that's where your heart is. And so I wanted to kind of show how fun drifting is and the fact that you don't have to be a pro, or you don't have to have like a special circumstance to be able to really enjoy it. Because I think a lot of people see that. I know I did when I first got exposed to it. I thought, I don't have a racing suit. I don't have Nomex gloves and shoes. I'm not able to do this. And I thought that about a lot of motorsports. But eventually, I saw some of the Japanese content and I saw regular guys doing grassroots events, and I was like, those guys are in tennis shoes. Those guys are in like regular-ish outfits with regular-ish cars. Like, I can do this. And so I want to share that with other people.
Well, I'm so glad you did, Ben. I think that's a great way of looking at things. You got to follow your heart. What's your passion? And you get to do what you do now, but just leading the way for other people. And you're right, it does get harder, but if you're following your passion, it will never feel like work, and you'll be creating something because for the sheer joy of it, I guess. And that
Yes.
definitely comes across in your videos. I think this is a perfect time to ask this question then. From Cuts YH on Twitch says, which esports racing games offer the best drifting experience? Now, as an expert following, I mean, was it Drift Racer? You spoke earlier about Gran Turismo. There's Super Drift 3D that's available. All of these things are available.
Mm.
Which ones have you enjoyed, and which ones now would you say give the most opportunity to get that drifting experience?
Sure. So, as far as what all I've enjoyed, I started out with Gran Turismo 2, 3, and 4. That was kind of the area of my life, the time of my life that I had the most time to play. And so I tried to drift in all of those games and did the best that I could. I played some Forza Motorsport. I haven't played Horizon series very much. I've played Live for Speed and Assetto Corsa. I have yet to try iRacing. That's one of the big ones that I haven't got to try yet. And then there's a slew of additional titles that are out there that I'm aware of that I haven't had the time, frankly, to dive into. But I would say if, and this is a really important caveat that people get either hung up on or they don't think about, and then it causes arguments for the internet later. But if your goal is to accurately simulate drifting so that you could go out and do basically the same thing in a real car, then without a doubt, Assetto Corsa and Live for Speed are two of the best titles out there. And unfortunately, neither of them are new, but they do the best job. They have the best force feedback support. Live for Speed is just a great simulator. It has an amazing tire model, a good collision system for the cars. So if you bump into somebody, the car can actually deform a little bit. If you do like a wall tap, the back of the car can actually deform a little bit. And so um, you don't really want to collide in drifting, but like it happens. And especially small collisions, LFS has an amazing collision system that makes proximity drifting a lot more enjoyable. It doesn't, to me, have as much mod support though, and the community seems a bit less active these days compared to 2006 to 2008 when I was a lot more active in it. And then Assetto Corsa, to kind of compare and contrast, Assetto Corsa does not have the sort of collision model, so the cars are essentially rigid. So if you bump into somebody, like you kind of bump off of each other. Whereas in Live for Speed, if you bumped into the side of a car, it would actually crumple around a little bit. So
Ah,
Assetto is not quite as enjoyable from a realism standpoint about collision specifically. Small bumps sometimes make the car do weird stuff that wouldn't actually happen. But outside of that, Assetto is an amazing game. Good it's got good physics, it's got good wheel support, and most importantly, it has just an absolutely amazing mod community that to this day, I mean, the game's been out for several years, but new cars are coming out, new tracks are coming out. Um, I mean, every month at least, and the content doesn't get old. The community is really excited about it, and that to me elevates Assetto Corsa from, if you were interested in drifting, a game that I wouldn't necessarily recommend, to probably my number one pick between the community and the wheel force feedback. It's a great title.
uh, it's summed up perfectly. Hoki Hoshi says, "Preach." That's what they say.
Hey,
Preach
what is
on
up,
that.
Hoki? We need to collab
I
on
love
video sometime, Hoki.
In terms of one quick question, Hoki also asked, favorite US track, and will you ever come to US Air? Two quick questions before, and I just want to tease this a little bit. I want to get to the pet peeves of Ben Craft. So just teasing that.
Okay. Okay. So, will I ever come to US Air? Resounding yes, absolutely. US Air is, for those who don't know, one of the best like grassroots style tracks. It is an relatively unknown gem in America that you should drive if you are into drifting. Um, it's got elevation change. There are three different layouts, and to give you a quick visual example, if you want to search up either US Air events out there, and the content is amazing. It is a really, it's just a really dynamic, awesome track to drive. So coming out to US Air is on my list. I do think it's probably some 20 plus hours away. So I'll have to strategize. That's not a trip I can just make, unfortunately, anytime I feel like it. But it's on my bucket list, 100%. And then my favorite U.S. track. Let's see. Hmm. I assuming that I get out to US Air, that's going to be high on my list. Grange looks really cool. That's out in California. It's now known as Apple Valley Speedway. I think it changed hands. Um, and for folks local to my area, there's actually a track called Oklahoma Motorsports Complex that is primarily used for karts, but it we drift out there on it, and it's actually a really nice track as well. Similar to US Air, but at a smaller scale in the sense that it's really fun to drive. It's a great surface. It's a good venue, but not a lot of people know about it. Just much smaller scale than US Air. US Air is definitely one of my top tracks I would love to drive. If I could just teleport myself in my car anywhere, I would probably end up out there.
Make it happen. Stay tuned for that from you, Ben. Okay, talking to many sim racers, and for yourself as well, being actual racing as well and drifting, I'm curious to know your personality. You said it earlier, you're a very mellow guy. That comes across, very soothing voice. I feel like I want to send you some of the books I'm reading at the moment for you to
Make
voice over
audiobooks.
for me. Yeah, and then I could just calmly fall asleep in a nice way. Very calming voice. Does that reflect your driving style, the way that you come across?
I think it does. A lot of people don't. Um, at this point, what I really shoot for is the like the most effortless looking drift that I can do. So it's strange because, and I'm no different. When you see drifting, it looks so dynamic and so aggressive and just over the top. Bam, bam, bam. You know, there's smoke flying. Sometimes there's sparks and body parts flying from the car. The panels going away. It's a very dynamic motorsport. However, uh, and I think this relates to grip racing as well. As a driver, when you're in the zone and when you're focused on the task at hand, you are completely invested in what you're doing. You don't have the stress of the day. You're not thinking about what you're going to be doing when you get home or the fact that you might need to go mow the lawn or something. You're completely in the moment. You're one with the car, barreling down the track, and I actually find that very calming. I find that very relaxing. It's probably some of the most like chill but fun times that I've ever had. And so the the kind of vibe that I go for with my driving is to make it as graceful and as smooth as and controlled as possible. I want it to look effortless, and I know I've done a good job when someone is riding along with me in the real car, which still has a stock seat for the passenger because I'm really mean, and I I look over while I'm driving and they're not having to hold on to anything because I'm not throwing the car too hard. I'm not throwing them around in the cabin. That's when I know that like everything is just keen.
And the buzz, the feeling you get when that happens, it, does anything else come close to that feeling?
Mm, man, yeah, drifting is some of the most fun that you can have. It's great. I do enjoy other things though, where like you either as a creator or in an athletic pursuit, like just when you can be fully in the moment. That's really great. Um, Whether that's with, you know, singing, or if you were able to I can't really play any instruments all that well, but if I could play instruments, I imagine that would be the case. I'm pretty sure any sort of a physical activity that demands your attention, you know, like if you were really good at basketball, I imagine it would feel similar when you're just in the zone and everything's going right. That's an amazing feeling.
I like the idea of not only audiobooks for you, Ben, but also some singing tunes as well. A new album, LPs coming out. I would love
I'm
that.
not terrible. I'm not terrible at singing. I might do that.
Be perfect. The perfect drifting ride along songs with Ben Craft, aka
There you
Kame
go.
Trick.
There you go. Sing
um,
along.
but I want to know what makes you not so mellow when it comes to drifting. Particularly, let's focus on sim racing. What are the pet
Okay.
peeves of Ben Craft? What things stand out for you when you're, say, on a set of course that really sort of grind your gears? I guess.
So, as far as in server behavior, like actually on track driving session behavior, uh, number one thing is common drift etiquette. Top of the list is pulling out from the pits onto the track without checking to see if the track is clear. You would think that anyone who has even understood that you should look before crossing the street would know that you don't just go, go driving and hope that no one is already out there. Cars on track are going to have the right of way. So that is probably the number one thing. It's such a simple thing to avoid, and yet somehow people find a way to fail to do that. So that's at the top of my list. Outside of that, um, and I guess going along with that, re-entering track if you have a off-course excursion and not waiting or caring about what other people are doing. Just because it's a sim and nobody's going to get their car damaged doesn't make that really a polite thing to do. Outside of that, mm, for sim, it's not so bad. I I guess there's a limit as far as ping that can become a little bit difficult if you're trying to drive with someone and you find them teleporting around in front of you because there's just a big gap in your physical location or in their connection quality that can be annoying. I don't hold that against the individual. It's just a challenge that you sometimes have to work through. And gosh, what else is there? As far as actually driving, that's probably the main thing. There are some instances. I wouldn't say that it's a pet peeve, but it's just not advisable when folks are very excited by the look of tandem drifting. And of course, I think most people who start drifting want to move to where they're doing these tandem drifts and looking really smooth. But there's an amount of work that you need to put in to understand how to drift a car as a solo driver before you, like, it's literally impossible before you are capable of being able to learn tandem, because in solo drifting you are focused all on the track, none of that stuff moves, it's all completely static, and you're learning, when I do this input in this situation it causes this result, and you're building this like mental vocabulary of what works and what doesn't so that you know what to do on any given turn. And once you do enough different tracks, you start to be able to approach a turn you've never drifted in your life and say, okay, this turn is similar to these other 15 turns that I know how to do. So I suspect that a similar approach will work, right? You learn how to do all that. Um, when you go onto tandem, you're then focused on the lead car and it's moving around, it's changing directions. The driver is, sometimes they make a mistake and you have to adjust to that. If you're not able to drive solo in a way that's pretty close to fully automatic, uh, you're not going to have the mental bandwidth, in my opinion, to really learn drift tandems very well. So I do think that sometimes folks get really excited about the look and feel of tandem and they try to learn it before I think that they're ready. Like if I was their driving coach, if I was their instructor, I would say, I understand your enthusiasm, but you need to focus a little bit more on yourself before you can then focus on chasing another car. So that's an area for improvement that I think a lot of folks would benefit from.
Passion is good, but grit is very important. You mentioned earlier
Yes.
about the learning process. Um, I find it the insights, the pockets of information, the little nuggets you're giving are brilliant. Just as we're sort of beginning to sort of understand about your motivation and what drives you, what's on the horizon for you, and taking into account everything that's happened in 2020, what's the what's the end goal? Maybe there isn't an end goal, but what's on the horizon for you and your channel?
Sure. So the short term is to make better content. It's pretty much what everybody who is trying to create content on YouTube needs to be focused on, and almost everybody is. But one of the things, so like I was exposed to drifting and decided to start YouTube based on like vlog culture, and I have been creating content sort of off the cuff, stream of consciousness style, very much like this conversation. Sometimes that works out well. Other times it might be a little repetitious, or I might ramble a little bit. So one of the things that I'm looking forward to doing is actually revamping some of my tutorials and making some new tutorial content as well. Because I, in addition to trying to like entertain and show people cool drifting stories, I'm also producing tutorials on how you can learn to drift yourself in the simulator, and then carry that over into real life. I want to tighten up that content, and I think there's an opportunity for me to make even more progress in that regard with just better content. Tighter speech, more supporting B-roll, a lot of YouTuber stuff. But essentially, making the content better, it's going to make the channel grow more. It's going to improve everything, and ultimately result, we hope, in more resources that will allow me to then take everything there to the next level. With the real life car, of course, I'm kind of waiting out this season. With all that has gone on, it's just not really the year to do a whole lot of in-person events. So I've got a few car projects that I'm working on, and I would like to get some new body parts for the car, get it looking a little bit nicer, and I'm really looking forward to hitting the real life events aggressively again next season and documenting those as well, because it's been a little while since I've had a chance to make videos along those lines. And I think in some of those, I'm really going to make a point to talk about the relationship between drifting in the simulator and drifting in real life, because people are really interested in that. But it's lately I've been doing all of that content using my sim. It's just a lot easier, honestly, and a lot more affordable. But it's dynamic to see it then reflected with the real car. So I'm going to try and make some back and forth videos where I can say, here's me doing this in the sim, and then in this video, here's me doing it in real life, and I can kind of prove and show different things that I want to. So that's what I'm looking forward to, and then we'll just have to see where things go. I'd love the opportunity to work on this sort of content full time. I'd love the opportunity to collaborate with more creators, and do some driving instruction periodically, partnering with a local event organizer. So I'd love to do some more of that as well. Just networking and growing, doing the best I can to make valuable content for people.
Amen to that, Ben, and loving that. That's so much to look forward to.
Yeah.
Hopefully, when this Nitro Nights Stories is finished, you might be able to help me on a few heel-toe shift whilst drifting maneuvers and correct power
Sure.
band. I'm struggling with that, but that's what your videos are about. I'm looking forward to that, all that you said. How can people find out and follow you? Because looking at your Instagram, I know that you're excited by the skins on Assetto Corsa. So where can people find you?
Yeah, so if you want to check out my content, the pillar where all of my content really originates from is youtube.com/the Kametrick, or you can just Google search Kametrick. There's no competition for that name. After that, the next best place to interface with me and my community is Discord. We have a Discord that is linked in basically all of my other content. It's linked in the YouTube channel and video descriptions. It's linked in the Instagram page as well. And there we have a growing community. I think we're over 4,000 members at this point who drift in the simulator and who drift in real life. And there's a lot of cases where I'll get a question about a wheel that I've never owned, for example. And the Discord is a great place because there are people that have your wheel. There are people that, are working with the equipment or struggling with the questions that you're struggling with. And not only me, but all the great folks in the Kametrick Discord can help folks out there as well. Last but not least is Twitch. I live stream on both YouTube and Twitch every Friday at 9 p.m. Central Time, which is not the best time, unfortunately, for folks out in Europe, but periodically as well. And I'll post this in the Discord. I do what I call sort of a EU bash, where I will time it at midday for me, like right now. And I can't do that normally because of the day job that I have, but I'll do an event where I can hang out with all the EU fam as well. So I hope that you guys will hang out and visit during the live streams. Come and say hi.
It's all appearing on the Twitch questions. Even DefCap's got a brilliant question about if you could own one car, which car would it be? But I will let you answer that on another night. Well, listen, Ben, this has been an absolute pleasure. I feel mellow. I feel calm now after talking to you, which I seriously, if you're not considering getting into the voiceover for audiobooks, you definitely need to do that. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope to get you on Nitro Nights at some point as well, talking everything that you've said, but in more detail as well. But listen, I hope you've enjoyed being on Nitro Night Stories.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Tom. I really appreciate it.
Oh, brilliant. Well, there you go. Mr. Kame Trick, Ben Craft, what a pleasure. Make sure you come and check out overtake_GG for more of the Nitro Night Stories. And I can't wait for our next one. But don't forget, check out, if you've enjoyed hearing from Ben, then make sure you get involved. And while you're there as well, overtake_GG for the next time I'll be doing Nitro Nights, and also Steffi, and of course Froskin. There's loads more to chat about. Listen, thank you very much for joining. We'll see you again next time.